Welcome to Learn at Work podcast, which is sponsored by iOS Press, the publisher of Work, a journal of prevention, assessment, and rehabilitation. We're delighted to host this podcast that will bring together insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions on topics that matter most in the realm of health, rehabilitation, work, prevention, and assessment. What can you expect from our podcast? We'll have expert interviews, individuals who have published in the journal, and we'll dive into conversations with leaders who have shared their valuable experience and expertise. You'll learn about different latest work trends, technology, and best practices. I'm Karen Jacobs, the founding editor of Work, and I'm the moderator of these podcasts. Welcome to this episode of Learn at Work, the podcast for the journal Work. Well, today I am traveling virtually to Israel. I wish I could be there in person, but this will have to do for now. We have three scholars who I'll be talking with today. And some of them, Dalia and Naomi, and I have known each other for many, many years. And we have a third professor who is in education. So we're going to go around and just briefly introduce ourselves. So Dalia, it's your turn.
Hi, good morning for you. For us, it's good noon. My name is Dalia Sachs, and my journey in occupational therapy started in 1965 when I graduated from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I started out as a clinician working directly with clients in medical centers in physical and mental rehabilitations. Over the years, my interest expanded, leading me to pursue a bachelor in psychology and philosophy, following by a master and PhD in occupational therapy at the New York University. As my career progressed, I transitioned from clinical work into academia. I held teaching and leadership roles at several institutions, most notably at the University of Haifa, where I chaired the Department of OT, helped shape the education of future occupational therapists, developed academic programs, and supervised research. In these roles, I had the privilege of mentoring many students and professionals, many of whom are now leaders in occupational therapy in Israel. After retiring, I remained active in the profession. I continue to supervise researchers, doctoral students, and for over the past 5 years, I have served as the academic advisor for a new occupational therapy program in Tzfat Academic College in the northern part of Israel. This program places a strong emphasis on multicultural competences and serves as a diverse student body.
Thank you, Dalia. You've had such a long history as a scholar and have contributed so much to occupational therapy, its history and its evidence. So thank you. Shunit, can you give us some of your background?
Hello, yes. Well, my history also, like Dalia, I mean, we share the information that the two of us are of similar age. So it goes back also about 40 years, my academic history. My PhD brought me directly to the world of work. Now I have a degree in special education and philosophy too, like Dalia. In my PhD, I became part of a research group at the University of Manchester University. They has the Reiter Research Center, and the group was funded by the English England in order to investigate the adult training centers for persons with cognitive developmental disabilities, because they saw that the people were not trained but rather remained on and on and on in the centers. I chose to combine the subject that I liked most, the subject of counseling, and I interviewed, as part of my PhD, I interviewed adults working in such centers or spending their time in such centers. The outcome was a design that I designed an interest vocational inventory. I went out and photographed people at work and designed an inventory where the interviewee could choose, rather than talk a lot or read, they could choose which kind of occupation they liked most. I begin a bit like Dalia with my very initial step into the world of work, because later on these two aspects, talking to the people themselves that are the subject of our research and our programs, and searching the world of work. Later on, we adapted the inventory for vocational interest into Hebrew with photographs from Israel. And later on, I was involved in a 4 or 5 years long research funded by the American Labor Ministry and the School of Social Work at Haifa University, in order to investigate what is happening with the occupational centers, the rehabilitation center, 2 centers in Israel, 2 centers in New York and Washington, and we compared what was happening with clients with the same problem that the English centers had. People didn't leave the centers and they were not actually rehabilitated. So I have in the past included the vocational aspect of our life, of people's life, as part of my research and interest. And every time I gave a course to students regarding persons or individuals with disabilities, I went up the ages, up to the adults. And then I told them, look, we have to look at the adult and the working life of the adults. And I should have really started the course in this area. When Dr. Yonati of Zurich, she was then under the supervision for her PhD, Dalia and myself. She came from occupational therapy. I was very happy to include occupational therapist in my as a PhD student, in order to merge the 2 subjects, education, occupational therapy, and on the whole, the idea of supporting persons with disabilities and special needs. Let's put it like that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful overview of your career and the connection with occupational
Connection,
therapy.
yes.
Let's have Naomi introduce herself, and then we'll talk about your study, that is the editor's choice paper in work.
Hello. I'm glad and honored to share my work experience as a clinical and academic occupational therapist. I've been privileged to experience the richness of our amazing profession, working with diverse populations across various organizations embracing lifelong learning, and pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities. Throughout my career, I've intentionally taken on new challenges every few years, allowing me to grow, adapt, and explore different facets of the profession. The journey has led me to create innovative services and advocate for meaningful social and policy change. So I began my career as an occupational therapist after earning my bachelor's degree from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I'm not sure everybody knows that in Israel, you become an occupational therapist with a bachelor degree. In my early years as an OT, I worked with young offenders and adults with acute mental health condition. I then spent 18 years in the largest physical rehabilitation clinic in our region, where I developed hand therapy, burn therapy, and all kinds of physical conditions, but mostly back to work programs and group and individual ergonomics interventions and evaluations like the ergo science and so forth. So given the modest salaries in Israel, I also had to work part-time throughout those years in a daycare centers for the elderly. I provided ergonomic consultations and practiced pediatric OT until I had my own child, since I didn't want to play with others, So alongside my clinical work, I pursued my master's degree at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where my ergonomic thesis examined the effects of typing frequency and speed on upper extremity cumulative trauma disorder. And looking back, it feels like a glimpse into the early days of our computer slave era. By the way, it was published in 1996 in the Work Journal. So now we somehow close this circle. A defining moment in my clinical career was establishing the Carton Clinical Laboratory for Assistive Technology. This, along with my PhD at the University of Haifa in an interdisciplinary track combining occupational therapy, research, and social work, it deepened my understanding of AT's or assistive technology's impact. So my doctoral study followed adults with disabilities for a year after they received state-funded assistive technology, assessing outcomes under OT supervision. In recognition of my contribution in these areas, I was honored with the Annual Excellence Award by the Israeli Society of Occupational Therapists. Currently, I am an just recently, emerita assistant professor in the Department of Occupational Therapy at the University of Haifa, where I served as the head of the department from 2016 to 2019. My scholarly interests are grounded in mixed method research and include three primary themes: environmental adaptations, accessibility, and assistive technology as facilitators for participation, ergonomics and rehabilitation in education and work settings, and participation in meaningful occupations for all kinds of vulnerable populations. And currently, I supervise PhD students in some few projects. For example, I'm trying to expand OT services among obese individuals, post-bariatric surgery, and other projects among women experiences sleep disturbances around menopause, autistic, self-identity of autistic young adults, and so forth. So maybe just to conclude, beyond academia, like many OTs, I continuously seek new opportunities to impact policy and expand OT services while respecting cultural differences. One key initiative involved research, training, and policy development on Israel accessibility law, equivalent to the ADA that you probably know, leading to my certification as a registered accessibility expert for public services and spaces. Another focus is employment transition programs for people with disabilities, including research on employees with autism, women with ADHD, women with breast cancer, and so forth. So these studies have informed policymakers, employers, and service providers. Recognizing this impact, I was invited to join the Ministry of Health Employee Health Committee, where I advocate for occupational therapy's role in workplace. So we really try to impact the policy around those and the role of occupational therapy.
Oh, thank you. You've had a rich history, and your activism is so important. And it sounds like you're in a role that can make a difference in accessibility. I'm thrilled that your paper is the editor's choice for the issue coming up in work. Maybe just quickly, if you could summarize the results that you found with that study.
I will. I shifted along my career from traditional rehabilitation center and realized the importance of the life of people in community and the inclusion of people in the social and work area. And I discovered with the research that we conducted the centrality of the work of the world of work. Just a few or one short example because of the time limit. I remember that we listened to people with mental health, and there were in academia, there were students in bachelor programs, and they said, you know, if I will find a good job, then it will be no problem for me to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and then we'll get married and have children and be a family. It was like work was the central part of life that could shape their future. In the last 10, 15 years, with my colleagues here and with Dr. Yonativ Zuri, who could not participate today, we developed a program for transition to work for high school students, students at risk. Later, and with the success of the program, we decided to adapt the program to less privileged communities in Israel, such as the Druze population. We translated the project to Arabic and made cultural adaptation of its various parts. The article published here is related to the project of School to Work Transition Program for at-risk youth in two high schools in two Arab villages. So I think that this is about the research that we're talking. And if I come back to my professional journey, today I'm recognized for my contributions to occupational therapy education and research, particularly in the area of diversity, accessibility, and social participation. I'm also active participant in the newly formed LGBTQ plus forum within the Israeli OT community. My work continues to bridge clinical practice with a deep commitment to social responsibility. In recognition of this effort, I was also honored with the Excellence Award of the Israeli Society of Occupational Therapy.
Thank you, Dalia. In the time that we have left, I'd love each of you to share something that you love to do outside of work. Like for me, I love photography, and Naomi has one of my photos from many years ago when I was in Israel and staying at her brother's home. Thank you, Naomi, for that hospitality. Then let's just go around. What what non-work activities do you love?
Can I say something, Karen? If you
Yes,
don't mind, I call you Karen.
yes, of course.
My academic life is for me, in a way, also fun. And every day I find new things, new ideas, new happenings. Our area of assisting and supporting persons with who are a bit different, who have disabilities, is growing and is getting more and more professional interest. My own vision is to apply a humanistic philosophy to whatever we do. Why do I say all that? And I have now PhD students, I consultancy work. My 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 life outside work is centered nowadays around my two youngest grandchildren that live nearby, or in my retirement I went to live near them, and I find following them in their from birth actually to be very very fulfilling. Um, but I think I myself, I tried painting, by the way, for a while, but it was not as meaningful as academic work for me. The writing, the research, the advising. So I must say, uh,
That's wonderful. I'm a grandma also, meaning in that role. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Naomi or Dalia, how about you?
I can say, I will try to say it as short as possible, but it's long. Beyond my professional work, I've been engaged in advocacy for women's rights, including the intersection of feminism and disability. And in the Haifa Feminist Center, we following a research, we published a article under the name "The Transparent Voice: Women Talk About Disability and Feminism," a research that included women with and without disabilities. In addition, peace and end of wars is very important to me. Therefore, these days I go to endless peace demonstrations. Not very successful in all this, but I do try to do it as much as I can. I did a lot of many years ceramic works, but now I stopped it because I'm too busy. And when I find a bit of spare time, though it's quite rare, I enjoy reading, especially novels and biographies.
Oh, love that. We'll have to
And
off the podcast share exchange titles that you like
yeah,
reading.
I with pleasure, and I cannot forget my granddaughter. That she's wonderful. She's so
Uh,
wonderful. You know it all. All of you are grandmothers.
yeah, we love that role. How about Naomi?
So I'm also a proud and engaged grandma, but mostly I'm active through various physical activities as a maintenance, since I'm really concerned about aging. I'm not sure I really love it, but I need it. And I am deeply committed to volunteering, both within my the occupational therapy profession, and even more so in my community. I support all the adults and serve on the board of Kivunim, which is a non-profit organization that develops services to help young adults with disabilities transition to independent living in our area. I also have a deep love for hiking, a passion that I began during my army service, where I worked as a guide for troops and youth exploring our beautiful country, which you've already explored yourself, Karen.
I love it.
Unfortunately, these days, much of my volunteer work, as Dalia said, involves weekly demonstrations against the war and the current political situation, as well as supporting the desperate families of the hostages in Gaza. I'd love to find some leisure like dancing or whatever for my spirit, but I hardly find any time because I'm really still very active academically. So we need some balance. We
We need some
always
balance.
preach for balance, and we are looking for balance.
Yes, and I think, I think it's very important as we talk about our careers, and these are illustrious careers, all three of you, that, we step back and know that we've made major contributions, but we also need to take care of ourselves as well. And it sounds like you are doing it in very meaningful ways through your career, your activism, and your role as educators, and scholars and grandparents, grandmas as well. I want to thank the three of you for being on Learn at Work. I love that you shared insight into your careers, the legacies that you have shared that are influencing generations of future scholars and clinicians, and I thank you. And we're very proud at Work to make your paper the editor's choice. So thank you, and our listeners, thank you
Thank
for
you
listening.
very, very much. And maybe we should
Thank you.
mention that we can share translated materials on a website of all, and it's listed in the article, and all occupational therapists can use those materials in English too.
Oh, thank you, Naomi, for that information. And the editor's choice papers are always free to read, so they'll be accessible to everyone. Thank you again,
Thank
everyone,
you
for
so much
listening.
for the opportunity.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.